To the US now, where President Biden has used his State of the Union address to warn that freedom and democracy are under threat in the US. The president referred to my predecessor 13 times, attacking Donald Trump on everything from Russia to the Capitol riots and COVID.
Now it's we who face an unprecedented moment in the history of the Union. And yes, my purpose tonight is to wake up the Congress and alert the American people that this is no ordinary moment either. Not since President Lincoln and the Civil War have freedom and democracy been under assault at home as they are today. What makes our moment rare is that freedom and democracy are under attack both at home and overseas.
Joining me now to react to that is former Donald Trump advisor, Dr. Seb Gorka. Thank you so much for being with us. What's your reaction to the State of the Union address? What did you make of that?
Well, first things first, it's been far too long, Douglas. Thank you for having me. And I just want to express my appreciation on behalf of lots of people for you being a single-handed media enterprise and doing more real journalism than most other companies, whether it's while rockets are flying in Israel or whether you're challenging people who hate Western civilization. So God bless you, Douglas.
Oh, thank you. Nevertheless, you have to answer the question.
Yeah, it wasn't a State of the Union. It was a state of the grumpy old man, and it was a campaign speech, as you correctly noted. He mentioned my former boss 13 times. Now, this is a constitutionally mandated requirement of the incumbent president every year to give a State of the Union. How are things going right now? Instead, he ranted. He spoke gibberish about the COVID vaccine curing cancer. And then he attacked my boss 13 times. But worse than that, he compared half of the nation to the Confederacy. And again, this is the man who on his inauguration day spoke of the promise of bringing Americans back together and unifying us. Instead, he divided us more than he ever had. So this is a desperate old man pumped full of whatever drugs they gave him so he could give that speech, who knows that right now President Trump is trouncing him in the polls, and the primary results tell you one thing, Douglas. The Americans desperately want my former boss back in the White House and to eject this senile old excuse of a politician.
Well, first of all, by the way, Joe Biden did mention in his speech that Donald Trump isn't much younger than him.
It's not the age that matters. But when I was in the White House, I often used to get asked, Seb, when the president's tweeting at 4 a.m., that's you, right? And I used to say, no, I need to get some sleep. This man may be 25 years older than me, but if I had a mere quarter of his energy, I'd be a happy man. The nature, I don't know what it is, the German blood, the Scottish blood, he's indefatigable. Just keep up with not only his rallies, but the constant abuse and the attacks from the deep state, the fact that he's facing as the leader of the opposition right now, 730 years in prison. Why? Because he is the leader of the opposition. So no, it's the age isn't the issue. The question is whether you love America and whether you want to fix it and save it. And President Trump is the latter.
Let me put a poll to you. There was a New York Times Siena poll earlier this week that showed that if the presidential election in America was held today, Donald Trump would beat Joe Biden 48% to 43%. Yeah. I mention that because it seems to me that since the polls are in Donald Trump's favor at the moment, it seems to me that neither America nor the rest of the world is particularly prepared for Trump the return. Do you agree?
It depends. It depends. So what the Trump phenomena truly represents is just part of a recrudescence, a rebirth of national sovereignty and this nowadays derisive term of populism, which I never understood why it was pejorative, because if you're popular, it means the majority of the people support your policies. But it starts with Nigel Farage and Brexit. Then it goes to Donald Trump. Then it goes to Meloni. Then it goes to Milei and Bolsonaro. So, in the Oxford debate I was recently at, the motion before the House was this House fears the return of Donald Trump. And my answer was, yeah, the people who fear the return of Donald Trump are the enemies of Western civilization, like ISIS, like Putin, like the mullahs in Iran, like the cartels that are now smuggling 12,000 illegals across our border every single day. So, you know, if you love Western civilization, if you like America and want it to be great again, you're going to vote for President Trump. We live in a perverse age. Douglas, you've written, you know, a library on this. We live in the most perverse of ages where our elites hate their own countries and hate their own civilizations. Donald Trump is the antithesis of that. This is a man driven by one thing and one thing alone, love of nation. And those who like him love America. There is no Republican-Democrat divide. The old taxonomy of left and right is irrelevant. The question is, do you love the country or do you hate it? That's the division today.
Let me put one final question to you, Seb Gorka. I've just written my column in New York Post this morning about this question, but there is surely, is there not, among other questions, a question hanging over Donald Trump if he does return to office, which is who's going to work for him? Now, of course, you did work for him, but if you don't mind my saying so, quite a lot of people worked for him, and they didn't all last as long as you. Some lasted, I think, about 24 hours. I know that there are moves to actually get staffers in at perhaps the lower level. Heritage Foundation in Washington's looking at this and others. But what do you make of Trump's ability to actually fill up the higher level positions, to fill up the cabinet? There are so many people who came into his administration, who he fell out with. Some of them, like Kayleigh McEnany, he didn't fall out with, but they left office and then he insulted them. I mean, there's a lot of bad blood with a lot of people who could fill those positions. Do you think that if Donald Trump does actually return, he's going to be able to fill up these positions? Who's going to work with him?
Well, I think this is the subject of a long discussion. Maybe we can get you on my national radio show, America First, here in the US. But to be honest, and I've said this publicly on my show, this is beyond, you know, having a fair and free election in November. This is my greatest concern. It's a question of personnel. A good friend of mine who hosts the show here in Washington, D.C. in the mornings said one of the greatest achievements of the left in the last generation is to make sure that decent people would never work in a conservative administration, especially a Trump administration. And I can tell you, it's not just the fact that we had fifth columnists and saboteurs at the highest level, including the then chief of staff, John Kelly. But then you have the question of who would do this. I was fine with being attacked by the establishment and the media because, hey, I'm a proxy for the president. But when they came after my wife, and when one journalist wrote an opinion piece about my 18-year-old son in school, calling him out by name and using the word traitor in the headline, what kind of sane individual wishes to do that to their family? So this is a great concern to me. Yeah. The good news is we've got 330 million people. We should be able to find at least the 4,000 presidential appointees who know what they're doing, are patriots, and are prepared to put up with the calumny. But it will be tough, and it is my greatest concern. But first things first, priorities. Let's get him over the finishing line and start to make America great again once more.